Well, welcome to our 7th screencast in the series on the Adobe DPS tools in InDesign. And for this one, we're going to talk a little bit about adding web content to your DPS articles. So to start off with, we're going to create a digital publishing document here. And we'll remove that primary text frame for right now and go ahead and click OK. Alright, so have an iPad format in horizontal orientation. And now what I want to do is I want to actually add content. Now you can add, you may want to add web content to your articles for a number of reasons. Number one, maybe you've got a web form you want to go ahead and include, or maybe you want to just include an entire website. You can do that. Or perhaps you want to include some specific web content as like a widget, say a Twitter feed or a Facebook feed. You can certainly do that as well. Now, of course, the caveat here is that anytime you have web content that you're adding to your article, the person who's viewing this on an iPad or an iPhone needs to also have internet connectivity. Otherwise, it's not going to show up. So a good rule of thumb is whenever you're doing this sort of content, always make sure you include some sort of static text or a background or something that can be seen by the user to let them know if, in fact, the content doesn't get loaded up. That, oh yeah, by the way, this was supposed to, include a Twitter feed, or maybe just include, if you're doing a Twitter feed, maybe a background graphic that would say, follow us on Twitter with your Twitter handle would be fine. But for right now, we're just going to show you the basics of adding web content. So to do that, anytime you want to add web content to your article, all you really need to do is create a frame. So I'm going to grab a rectangular frame here, and I'm just going to put a frame right within my margins. And that's rather boring, but now let's go ahead and insert some web content into this frame. To do that, just go ahead and open up your folio overlay. And unlike before, whenever we've created object states or added audio or video, the folio overlay window right here is just kind of sitting here waiting to ask us, okay, what exactly do you want to place inside of this frame? Well, if we scroll down, we'll notice we have a web content overlay. So if I choose this, it's pretty unassuming, but essentially all I need to do now is type in the URL of the web page that I want to display, or I can actually click on this little folder, which we'll do in a minute, and I can actually insert an HTML document directly into this frame. And that's pretty neat. But to get started, let's go ahead and let's do, whoops, if I spell Google right, there we go, google.com. Now, one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure you check autoplay. Basically, that means is that the minute that this frame is displayed on your iPad, your iPhone, your Android, Kindle, it will automatically load the page, or at least attempt to load the page. You can also choose to put a transparent background, which is helpful if you're dealing with things like your own HTML documents. And then you can scale the content to fit. So that's it. Pretty unassuming. Let's preview this and let's see if this works. And there it is. There's Google. So I can come in here and I can type a Google search. There's Google. And I can use Google just as I normally would. That's pretty simple. Okay, well that's fine. But what if I want to put my own web page in here? What if I want to put my own web content? Well, I'm going to open up Adobe Edge Code, and we're going to create a new document, and let me increase the font size so everyone can kind of see it here. And I'm just going to do just a simple web document here, nothing fancy. Maybe use a little bit of embedded CSS. See if I can spell today. I haven't quite had my coffee yet this morning, so. All right, and yeah, let's use some embedded CSS. All right, let me go ahead and save this, and I'll save this as webcontent.html. Okay, and inside of this, maybe I'll add a first level heading. Okay, like I said, not looking for any design awards, but at least it works. So in here, maybe I can add some of my HTML styles that I want. Maybe I can add things, like, old school star hack, and something like that. Maybe change up my first level heading up a bit. Let's say I'll just change the font family. We'll do Arial, Helvetica, and do a fallback to sans serif. We'll change the color to, say, red, and I'll change the font size here to, say, 48 pixels, and update my paragraph. Give my paragraph some margins. Let's say 2 M's on either side, actually top and bottom only, and then change its font family as well to something very garish. How about Comic Sans? That'll work. Okay, so there's a basic HTML document. Basic structure, basic style. Now, of course, I could, normally when you're dealing with web pages like this, you would use an external style sheet using the link tag. And for those of you who don't know anything about web, don't worry about any of this. I'm just showing those of us who have some experience in web exactly how cool this is. You can just kind of throw your web pages directly into it. But any resources that you're linking to this HTML document, external images, your external style sheets, JavaScript as well. By the way, guys, you can also use JavaScript in this. All of that will be basically included and added to your article when you put this on an iPad. So you don't have to worry about having to load all your assets on the web. It'll actually load up all of those inside of your DPS folios for you. So that's pretty nice. It's like a package almost. So here I've got my web content. So let's see what this looks like inside of the web browser. So here I have it in Safari. So don't you just love Comic Sans? So that works out really well. All right, so let's go ahead and add this to our web content. So I've got my frame selected. So I'm going to delete google.com. I don't want to use that. I'm going to click on this folder icon. And from the desktop, I'm going to choose my HTML document and click Open. And now let's preview it. There we go. Finally past the spinning wheel of death. And there it is. There's my HTML content. Now, of course, I can create anything I want in this HTML content. And like I said before, you can also include things like JavaScript. JavaScript animations also work, guys. You can actually include step-based animation, transitions inside of this, and it'll work. Now, there is a small little caveat. If you're using step-based animation in your CSS, it will not work on the desktop viewer, but it will work on an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device using mobile Chrome, mobile Safari. Those will work just fine. So a key little tip is that if you're using web content in your folio articles and you're going to go ahead and use animation with it, don't just test it in the viewer here, the desktop viewer. Also make sure you sideload it and test it in an iPad just to make sure that the animations are working properly, because no one's going to be viewing this on the desktop viewer. They're only going to be viewing it on the mobile device, which of course means if you don't have them, you're probably going to have to invest in some mobile devices. So eBay is a good source. Well, there you go. Web content inside of your DPS articles, fairly straightforward. That wraps up this screencast. So join us for the 8th screencast, and we're going to talk about how to actually create the folios and get them onto your iPad. I'll also talk a little bit about how folios are navigated, and that will wrap up this first series of screencasts on the Digital Publishing Suite.